It's the 60 Go podcast, proudly sponsored by Mint Sports. I'm joined on the phone today by Damien Seibold. Seives, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate.
I'm going to start with the Sharks today because that's where all the news will be heading in the next hour or so, with the team list just dropping. There's been a few casualties from the weekend's team, and most notably Talakai to the bench and Matt Moylan out of the team. What do you think of that?
Mate, I get it. I do. A little bit of a, sniff of, well, we have to blame someone, so let's blame Moylan because we're not going to blame Nico. And I'm not saying Nico's at fault, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I think there's some issues going on with the Sharks, and the amount of points that they conceded on the weekend at full strength really highlights that. Talakai and Moylan next to each other clearly have some defensive issues, but they're going to miss Talakai's yardage game. He gets them out of trouble. Him and Damien come in and back up those big winners of theirs and really get them on the front foot. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Is there a theory, though, that they're the number one attacking team in the comp, or near enough to it, right? So if you sacrifice some of that, then that's okay if you can somehow come up to top 7 defensive team, because they need to be better.
That's right, but do you see it happening? I mean, we've got 2 years now of seeing when they play good sides, they struggle to win, and now it's become when they play good sides, they're getting hammered, and it's not even they're not even close.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
The Warriors were certainly impressive over the weekend, but I would say that this comes back to the Tigers game. I didn't think that the Tigers were anything flash, and for them to go in at 12-all at halftime, the alarm bells were sounding then. And, of course, you can go back to the stat that they can't beat top 8 teams, but the fact of the matter is that fundamentally, defensively, they're very poor.
Yeah, that's right, and that's, the Tigers they're not a good footy side. Look, at the end of the day, they're not. There's no beating around the bush, and they did trouble them. And they troubled them for a long time in that game. Yet they got away from them in the end. But I don't know. Look, I really don't. I think there's too much of a focus on attack there. And it's strange because Fitzgibbon's been touted as a defensive coach and the defensive mastermind of the Roosters for so many years. And they just seem to be leaking points at will. And, I'm not afraid to say it. The elephant in the room is Nico. I've been talking to a couple of mates, and they're really good footy brains. In attack, when it's on, it's on. When it's not, he's way too sideways. And defensively, a mate of mine who has coached at a really high level actually pointed something out to me the other day. He shoots out of the line now because he's scared to make a defensive read. So you watch him, he'll shoot out of the line, and 9 times out of 10 he gets away with it. The times he doesn't is when he shoots and he doesn't get there quick enough and he plants the heels, and that's when people will burn past him.
There's clearly a top 9 now in the competition. So we spoke earlier in the year that maybe, a team could jump from 11th to 8th in the last week. I don't see that happening now. The top 9, I think, is very much solidified there. Do you think that the Sharks could be the team that misses out?
Well, their for and against isn't getting any favours. I suppose the one positive there is looking at it now. They still have 100 difference, so they're positive 100. So Parramatta's positive 97. Rabbits are positive 92. The Cowboys are the one with the worst for and against there. But obviously they've hit a purple patch and they're tracking in the right direction. I think whoever wins out of Para and Cowboys this week is safe. They definitely make the finals. The Sharks, they've got that buffer of 2 points on those sides, so I think they're in a fairly comfortable spot. For me, it's a toss of the coin. Like, legitimately, I agree with your statement. Knights, Manly, Titans. Knights and Manly, really, they've got the the extra point on the other side. They're just not close enough. They're not going to make the 8. Titans, Dolphins, Roosters, no way. They've got too much work to do and they're not good enough.
And if you look at the Raiders obviously have the worst for and against out of the top 8 teams, but they're 4 points clear of Parramatta, South, and the Cowboys, so I can't see them dropping out.
No, I agree. I think the Raiders they don't have the easiest run home. I know they've got the Warriors this week, and then the following week they've got the Knights, which is one of those games that the Raiders win, they're assured of making the finals. If they lose, they're in trouble. But I just think, like you said, that 4 points that they've got up their sleeves, it's going to be huge come the back end.
The other team that Sharks versed over the weekend was the Warriors. They were really impressive. I think that I'm going to pencil them in for a top 4 spot just because of the run that they've got. This week's a big one, obviously. I think that they play Canberra. But I think it's pretty safe to say that they'll make top 4 on their schedule.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And you think they're on the same amount of wins as Canberra. So if they do happen to win this game, they've then got the extra bye up their sleeve.
That's right.
They'll put it between themselves and Canberra. It'd be good. We should have a deep dive into the Sharks' run home, because if the Sharks have got relatively decent teams, they could drop out of the 8. If they've got a run of bottom 4 teams, well, they'll push for the top 4 because they'll belt those teams. This week
they don't. Sorry to cut you off. They don't. It is quite tough. They've got Manly, Penrith, South over the next 3 weeks, so that's 3 tough games. And they've got the Titans, the Cowboys, Knights, and then they finish off with the Raiders. So it's certainly not the easiest run home.
Yeah, this next 3 weeks will probably determine it, won't it? I mean, while Manly lack that attack with Tom being out, they have shown that over the most of the season, but especially the last few games, that they're gritty, they're not going to roll over. So, they make life difficult. The Cowboys are arguably, excluding Penrith, in the best purple patch in the comp. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
And Manly found a way to go with them. So it's no lay down there that the Sharks are going to beat Manly this week. It's probably a toss of the coin. If they win it, top 4's alive. If they lose it, your earlier prediction of could they drop all the way out, well, it could be on.
Well, that round 25 game against the Cowboys, that's the one, isn't it? That's the one that everyone should put a pen around, because the Cowboys, and this just shows you, how much you can't afford to do what they did, because they were so bad at the start of the year and they lost so many games that they should have won, that now they've hit this unbelievable form. They've been on fire for 2 months. They're still not in the 8.
That's right. And I honestly, if I was to, bet the house on one of these sides not making it, well, it's still the Cowboys, because at the moment they're still not in the 8. I know it's only on for and against, but they're not there. So all the other teams have got to do is continue to win the games that they should win, and the pressure just piles up on the Cowboys.
That's right.
Really big game this week, Cowboys.
Yeah, it is. Yep, absolutely. And the Cowboys, they can't afford any slip-ups. They've been playing essentially semi-final football for 7 weeks now. That's
right. And they were really good on the weekend as well. They weren't, they just didn't get the job done. They played really good footy on Friday night with those guys backing up, and I thought Saturday night it was a quality game of footy. And Tom Dearden is outstanding. He is playing unbelievable football at the moment, and I know we spoke about it a month or 2 ago. If it wasn't for Tom Dearden, they would have been sitting bottom 2 or 3 at one point. And I just think he's continuing to play great footy and really steering the ship for him.
Is he a halfback or a 5'8", Tom Dearden, long term?
Look, he's a halfback. He takes over from Cherry Evans for the Queensland side in my mind. I think he is, traditionally, we would have known him as a more natural 6, but again, there's no difference between 6 and 7 really, unless you are a pure runner of the footy. Both blokes are responsible to steer the side around, and Tom Dearden's got a very good kicking game, so he can handle that with ease. And he's still a young bloke. He's still, early 20, 21, I think he might be. So he's got a lot of maturing to go. And Townsend will certainly be guiding him in that space.
The Cowboys played Manly over the weekend, and obviously Manly went down. I think it's safe to say that Manly's realistic final aspirations are probably gone now.
Definitely. Look, mathematically, all the way down to, well, you could argue all the way down to the Roosters can still make it. Yeah. Mathematically, Knights and Manly can still make it because they've got that extra point on board. But I just can't see it happening. Knights have left their form to way too late, and Manly, to beat the good sides, you need your best players, and Tommy's worth more than just one good player. He's probably worth two or three good players. That's how good he is.
So in the land of reality, Manly can't make the finals, so let's just work on that premise. What is Manly's goals from here? Because no Tom, and it's such a shame because there are some athletes who are destined to just, their body is just not capable of playing the role that they need them to play in their career. We've seen it lots of times over the years in professional sport, not just the NRL. But and Tom at the moment, he certainly looks like he's going down that track that we'll be talking about in 10 years, that we never got to see the great Tom Trbojevic have an extended period of time. So, and he's only getting older. Like these problems aren't getting smaller. So, what are the goals here from Manly for the rest of the year?
Just on Tom, if he was 30, I'd be concerned about him. More than what you are anyway, because at the end of the day, the poor bloke's had that many injuries. It's not funny, and I just hope that he gets some luck at some stage. But he is only, I think, 25, 26 still, so there's plenty of hope for him that he'll have a really strong career. As far as Manly goes, I just think that they need to continue to show what they've shown the last few games without him. That grit, ripping in, showing that they can be competitive in every game. They'll win a couple on the way home. They'll lose a couple, but I think for them it's just important to look at a few things and really work out what they're going to do with a couple of guys. Obviously Brewster's not going to be the 5'8" moving forward, and it's easy to say, well, let's move him into the back row now, but you have to have someone that can actually do a job, if not, do the same job, if not better, and I'd argue that they don't. It's just one of those things. Like Cooper Johns is, he'd be a great bloke to have around the top 30. Every now and again he can fill in and do a job, but consistently at that level, I think he's probably not there. Jake Arthur, he's still such a young guy, so maybe an opportunity there for him to play a bit of 5'8" and see what happens with Schuster in the back row. But I just think they need to show what they've shown over the last couple of weeks. Keep working hard, be in games, win a couple, get some confidence, get Tom back. Luke Brooks coming is going to be, I think it's going to be a really good thing for them. And again, it's probably showing once and for all that while Gareth is one of the world's best competitors and he's in everything and he tries his heart out, his yardage game is unbelievable. He just lacks that little bit of X factor that a lot of the good fullbacks have with his hands. So, looking at a couple of things there would be interesting as well.
I just want to move on to Penrith. They beat Redcliffe over the weekend. Now, I would argue that the Penrith team of last year is better than the Penrith team of this year. But
on paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they are still so much better than every other team, particularly defensively. The ability that they can rest, all these players and still have, in the end, what is a comfortable win against another NRL team and start heavy favourites and, just carry on, speaks to a lot of things, speaks to quality of coaching, speaks to depth of the squad and how important that is. But to me, even though that I would argue that last year's Penrith team was the best of the Penrith teams that we've seen, this team is still the best.
Yeah, it is. It's like 218 points after 17 games. It's phenomenal. I think it works out to be around 13 points roughly a game that they're conceding.
Yeah, just under 13 points.
Yeah, and I can't see who is going to beat them. We spoke about the Cowboys before. Well, the Cowboys are going to really find things going tough in the next 6 to 8 weeks because of the run that they've had to have. And like you said, they've been playing semi-final football for 2 months. They haven't had a chance to rest any of their Origin players. At the end of the day, did they have seven Origin players for the last 2 games?
Yep.
I think that's the number. And then they've had to back up, and all of them have had to play again straight away, whereas Penrith have rested everyone. They haven't risked anyone once. Anyone that, like I'm sure Cleary, if it was must-win, he would have played on the weekend.
Yep.
You know, why risk him? Why risk him? Save him, freshen them up. They're going to get better and better as the season goes on, and it's going to, in my opinion, it's going to be a suspension or an unfortunate send-off or something like that is going to be the only thing that stops them from winning the comp.
Well, if you look at their defensive record, so the magic number you look for is 16.5, right? So 16.5 is the average points conceded by every premiership winning team in the NRL era. So in the NRL era, all premiership teams, 16.5 is the average points that they've conceded throughout the year. Now, to make the grand final, only one team's made it, conceding over 20 points a game. That was Parramatta last year. So the next closest defensive team, so Penrith are conceding 12.8, which is an historic level of defence. So it's the best defensive team that we've seen in the NRL era. So the next closest is the Storm, who concede 19. And then between 19 and 21, there's 8 teams. So the stark comparison between Penrith and the rest is so crazy. It's not funny.
Yeah, it's a huge stat. Like 7 points a game, essentially, or just over 6 points a game. That's a converted try, and you hear about any of the professional punters who talk about big swings in games and blokes being suspended and star players missing. They normally talk about that being a 2.5 or a 3 point swing. At worst a 4 point swing. A full converted try better than everyone else is for a team that it's not like they're a bad attacking team either. They're scoring well over 24 points. I think it might be a game themselves. You just find it hard to see someone being able to topple them. The games they have lost have been just clearly they haven't turned up. Scrappy games in torrential weather where a couple of things didn't go their way. They bombed a couple of tries. But even in those games, they were only conceding 13 points.
Well, you mentioned the Penrith losses there. I'm just looking it up very quickly, but I know for a fact 2 of them were in torrential rain against the Broncos round 1, and then the Tigers later on in the year. They were in torrential rain. South, it was a remarkable comeback by South in the last 10 minutes to get that done, and South played absolutely out of their skin that night. The other loss that they had was a Mitch Moses field goal. So when Cleary kicks the greatest kick of all time to level it up. And then the other loss was against the Cowboys when they had all their Origin players out. So, like, there's no one coming in and bullying Penrith for a week. Like, the most that they've lost a game by this year is 4 points. And
probably that's, outside of something dramatic happening to them, like a send-off, someone like a South probably is the only team that can beat them because they can put on 3 or 4 tries in 10 minutes against anyone just if they, Latrell and Cody flip the switch. So it's really interesting. And that night against, Tigers and Broncos, the night against Broncos, I think they had 3 or 4 disallowed tries. And the game against the Tigers, they bombed a few in that game from memory. A couple of drops over the line, and it might have been a kick and ricocheted off a fingertip that was disallowed as well. So, yeah, they're impressive.
They've got 2 1-point losses, a 2-point loss, and 2 4-point losses. That's it's almost laughable when you look at it and how good they are. And like, I'm not sure what they are to win the comp, but I'll tell you what, it'd be a brave soul to bet against them. I'll just throw this out at you. I don't think anyone will beat Penrith this year in the finals, right? So, what if Pappenhausen was to return for the Storm and he was the Pappenhausen that we know? Are the Storm a chance?
Oh, of course they're a chance, but I don't. Yeah, look, they're probably second or third best side. They just seem to be a long way away from Penrith, though. Even with Pappenhausen, I can't see them. I can't see them beating them. Like the Rabbits, I could see them beating them, but I can't see the Rabbits finishing higher than fifth. And I don't trust the Rabbits to win 3 games in a row.
No.
It's one of those. I was just looking at the odds here. Penrith are about $2.75 still, which is pretty good value, to be honest. It's almost one of those. You'd be prepared to spend $50, throw 30 on something real rough. A Rabbits, Warriors, Cowboys, Para type at 19s, or Rabbits at 7s. And then cover yourself with 20 on Penrith just as a saver, because $2.75, if they get to the semis, you're not going to get much more than $1.45. I wouldn't have thought for them anyway. So it's crazy.
They'll start favourite in every game that they play for the rest of the year, and rightfully so. I do think it is Penrith's comp to lose, and it's remarkable saying that. I used to have when tipping premiership winners, I used to always have the theory, never ever will I tip a team to go back-to-back, and here we are saying that a team would be stunned if they didn't win 3 in a row, but it's...
Yeah, do you think the injuries, suspensions, and the depth that they've got where they have been able to rest everyone, it's actually just completely changed my thought process on Penrith this year? And again, I also reckon that they went into round 1, or they went into that World Cup challenge with possibly a couple of weeks training under their belt. Look, all of those World Cup guys would have just been given that much time off. It wasn't funny. And, you can see now how they're slowly getting fitter, stronger. Little glimpses of the Penrith that we normally see are starting to come out.
Well, here's the thing as well. So, if Nathan Cleary was out, right, let's say he got injured in the finals. If they start Jack Cogger, they're still starting favourite in every game. Now, it might not be as much, but they're still the favourite to win. So, the fact that you can take not only their best player, but the best player in the competition out of their team, and they're still favoured to win.
They're still favourite to win, but that's the type of thing that would give, one of the other teams a legit chance.
Oh, and I get that, and I agree, but part of me also thinks we just saw it a week ago when the Storm were up 14-0 against Penrith at home. No Nathan Cleary. Storm had everyone except Pappenhausen, obviously, and they got destroyed.
Yeah, they did. They did. And the Storm, for a team that probably hasn't been that impressive all year, it was a shock to see them come out of the blocks like they did and then get hammered for the next 50 minutes. Just looking at it, it is so compressed. So, like, the Cowboys are nice, but they could easily still finish top 4 if they continue the run that they're on.
Yep.
It is crazy.
The team that the Storm beat over the weekend, the Roosters. We spoke about Manly's goals for the rest of the year. What are the Roosters? Because the Roosters are done. So, do they try... Well, I think Sam Walker's actually been shut down for the rest of the year as well, so it's no point talking about him. What do you think that...
Do you think... Sorry to interrupt, mate. Do you think they've gone back there?
I think that they would have. I don't think it would have made a difference. I think they need to have some really tough conversations at the Roosters, and I'll tell you what, I would be I think the conversations need to be had around Luke Keary in particular. Now, I'm not sure how they replace him. I've got no suggestion for that. But I just think there are so many people at the Roosters who we looked at the start of the year and we would have mentioned as part of names that were going to help them towards their premiership this year because they were one of the favourites for it. But there are so many of those players that have either lost a step or not playing their best, or tell me one Roosters player who's played their best this year.
No, they're not. I mean, Swaley, he's over at English, at that Australian rugby already mentally. Keary's trying his heart out, but he's not playing great. Manu is going okay. I would say Teddy falls into that. It's not as bad as what people make out. The whole things are never as bad as what they seem, and they're never as good as what they seem. I think Teddy's probably in that basket. He probably hasn't been as disgraceful as what's been made out. He certainly hasn't been good, but he hasn't had much around him. For me, the big things that stand out is Brandon Smith doesn't suit them, and Victor Radley's the conversation that's got to be had. I mean, he's not playing good footy at all. He spent half the year on the sideline suspended. Now, I'm not saying he's not a good footballer, and if he left, you'd be jumping as quick as you could to try and wrap him up. But it's just not. It's not a good environment at the moment. He's just not playing good footy. The amount of errors that he's made, penalties he gives away, the amount of time he gets suspended. It'd have to be a thought. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. I think that there are some liabilities in that team. And you just look at their bench, right? And I know that they've got a couple of injuries at the moment. Okay, I get that. But this is their bench this week. They've got Brandon Smith, Egan Butcher, Cyril Wong, and Terrell May. That doesn't really strike fear into the heart of many opposition teams. So,
Egan Butcher, he's another example of someone who's probably gone backwards.
Who was that, sorry?
Egan Butcher.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought he was really playing some good footy last year, and it's not happening for him.
Well, Nat Butcher, I thought should have been picked for Australia last year. That's how good he was going.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, again, going backwards.
Actually, there's one player who's played well for the Roosters this year, and that's Lindsay Collins, but it's been the Maroons jersey.
Yeah, exactly right, because I thought he was horrendous on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, he's backing up after a tough Origin series where they'd given everything he had. He's allowed to have a night off.
But you just look at some of these names. So, Waria Hargreaves is going around again next year, right? So, eventually he will fall off a cliff, okay? And some would say he already is starting to decline, not rapidly, but he's certainly not what he was 5 years ago. Nathan Brown should not be in this Roosters team. No. And you've got people like Jay Turpin at the start of the year, was lucky to get a starting spot anywhere, let alone the Roosters. So, and I'm not trying to bag these players. I'm just saying that for a team at the start of the year that was equal premiership favourite, this is one of the biggest disasters we've ever seen.
Put this into perspective. I would argue that Jake Turpin's one of their best players at the moment.
No doubt about it. That
shows exactly where they're at based on the statement you made before with him struggling to get a gig at the start of the year. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Joseph Suaalii, he's gone, and you know what? He's under contract for next year. If I was the Roosters, I'd be trying to get out of that for next year. I'd be saying, go, see you later, because he's on a lot of money at the moment.
And sitting down with him, mate, you're a winger. There's nothing more to it than you are a winger. Let's stop with the experiment of playing you in the centres, because it's pretty obvious that that's where he's suited. Tough carries in yardage, leaping for cross-field kicks, and just he's safe under the high ball. So it's interesting because I just don't know. I don't know what other options that they do have at the moment. And if they move him on, well, yeah, Dom Young's coming in. Do you reckon Dom Young's reconsidering that decision?
Absolutely. How can he not be? And particularly with the form that Newcastle's found over the past few weeks.
Yeah, that's it. They've really found a template. Bradman Best, I probably fall into the trap of being one of the most guilty of not criticising him, because I reckon I know there's a good player there, but being critical of him. But I think it's a lot to do with you're forgetting that he's a young guy. He's 20, 21 years old. They're probably wanting a bit more. He's not like Zach Lomax, who is 23, 24 now. Bradman Best has still got a lot of maturing to go. So he's starting to come into his best footy. Caleb Pong is playing really, really good footy. They've dropped the experiment of playing him in the halves and moved him back to fullback. It suits them. If they can keep the Safidi brothers, which I've heard whispers that may not, they may be looking to move on. Definitely, they've got the core there to be a top 8. Well, to continue to be a top 8 side. Before last year, they were a top 8 side for the previous 2 years, and they fell off a cliff.
Yep, absolutely.
The Warriors are the side that I do think can cause some damage. And 6 weeks ago, we can go back and look at podcasts that we did, and I reckon I said the exact opposite. I said no chance, they're pretenders, and it's not going to happen. Well, the further we move on towards semi-final footy, if they have a home semi, good luck.
Yep, and a healthy Sean Johnson. Sean Johnson, like a lot of people saying Payne Haas is a lock for the Dally M. I'm not sure about that. I think Sean Johnson is going to be right there on Dally M night, and he's playing the best he ever has.
I agree, and realistically, Wade Egan's playing excellent, best he's ever played. Charms box that every now and again. He has a really cracking game, but it's hard to think who consistently would take points off Sean Johnson. Every time they win, he's going to be getting the 3-2 or 1.
Yes, and just on that, so we just spoke about the Roosters, right? And I asked you which one of these star-studded players has played to their best level this year, and we couldn't name one. You look at the Warriors, and at the start of the year, you would have said this is an average crew. Well, every single one of those players is playing career best form, and look how they're going.
Yeah, exactly right. Addin Blake is back playing at his best and playing big minutes. Tohu Harris, who I thought has been, not great the last couple of years, he's playing good footy again. Rocco Berry really starting to find his feet and play good footy. So they've got a really strong side. And some of the ball playing that Johnson is doing is just phenomenal. It's not going for the miracle play or the big play. It is just creative, great ball playing.
So does that fall back onto a conversation then about coaching? Do we have to look at Trent Robinson? Or do we just sit there and go, hey, Andrew Webster's the greatest thing since sliced bread? Everyone for years was saying Cameron Ciraldo is going to be the next big thing, and he may well be. But Andrew Webster certainly wasn't bringing nothing to those Penrith teams, evidently.
Look, I know. I think Robinson has got too many runs on the board to be too critical of his coaching. But again, there'll be the detractors who'll sit back and say, oh, yeah, but, anyone could have coached some of those sides that won comps because of the star quality that they had there and the leaders that they had in Cronk, Sonny Bill Williams, etc. Jake Friend, Boyd Cordner. So leadership plays a big part. It's clear that Webster's doing a great job there, and whether or not he's... One of the things that I think that they've done, and without being there, you just don't know, but I think that everything's been simplified. I think they've got a really clear and concise plan on what they're trying to do. And it's helping Sean Johnson because he doesn't have to overplay his hand.
The other thing I'd mention too is defensive systems. So Andrew Webster has obviously tried to the best of his ability to bring in the Penrith defensive system because it's the best and it's the one that he knows. Now, it's not as good as Penrith because you don't have the quality of talent that Penrith does, but it's certainly working well enough for them. And then if you look at the Roosters, have the Roosters just not evolved? And I say that because Craig Fitzgibbon was the assistant coach there. He did a lot of the defence work at the Roosters. When the Roosters won back-to-back competitions, they were the creme de la creme of defensive teams in the competition. I remember watching them as a Melbourne Storm fan. Whenever the Storm would play the Roosters, and I just think, man, we just cannot score a try. against these guys. So does it come back to defensive systems and the fact that the Roosters system, which Craig has obviously taken to the Sharks, has that just fallen behind a little bit? Have these guys failed to evolve a little bit maybe?
Well, the Sharks' defence isn't that good. So, I don't know. That's a tough one. The Roosters, I'm just having a look. Defensively, then they're about 11. So yeah, they're about where they should be. It's just the fact that they can't score a try to save themselves. That's where the issue lies. But are there questions to be asked around the Roosters and some of the people that have moved on over the last couple of years and how that's happened? And I'm talking coaching staff. So Fitzgibbon left. Going back a few years, Adam O'Brien had his time there, and he was probably only there 12 months anyway. The interesting one for me was the Jason Riles during the year that he expressed interest in wanting to be a head coach, and it was, right after beat it, see you mate, you're gone. And they just dump and run.
So do you think that has hurt the Roosters over time?
I do think it's hurt the Roosters, and I also think that it is it's a snapshot of potentially a deeper thing that's going on there.
Yep.
So it's power plays, concerns about what Jason Riles was going to take to another side. I mean, to just dump someone like that straight away without letting him see the contract out, when, as far as we know, it wasn't about performance. He hadn't gone and done something. He just expressed that he wanted to go and be a head coach somewhere. I don't know. I just find it interesting, and it's one of those things that it could be a part of what the deeper issue is, and that's what we're having a chat about is, are there other things going on, and what might they be? Because you look at the Tigers, and, oh, wow, things aren't looking great there at all. With Fulton and Benji obviously not seeing eye to eye, and how much say has Tim Sheen's really got there, and who's really the coach, and if Marshall is the coach at the moment, well, are they sitting back and thinking, oh, hang on, have we done the wrong thing? If you believe what you read, which I don't, there's already been calls made out to Justin Holbrook to suss out what he's doing and whether it's to be an assistant or, hang on, mate, just keep your powder dry because there could be an opportunity here soon.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would just say on the Roosters, they came out earlier in the year when the Jason Riles thing happened, and it was alleged that they were quite disappointed with the fact that they had become, in their eyes anyway, a bit of a coaching carousel. So you've had Fitzgibbon go, you've had Adam O'Brien go on, and now you've had Jason Riles all go on to eventually Jason Riles, you think, would take over the Storm now. But you would think that all these guys have moved on to be head coaches. Well, do you want to be good or not? Like, we've seen the Storm carousel of assistant coaches go on to be head coaches all around the league. We've seen the Penrith one now. Like, it's these coaching trees that are continual things. Like, your brother has Shane Flanagan there. I'm sure. Like, he knew at the start of the year there was a half decent chance Shane Flanagan might get a job at the end of the year. So you want the best people around you, and if you aren't secure enough to have the best assistant coaches, well, then you're not going to succeed. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, the best teams have the best assistant coaches.
Exactly, mate. And it's not, yes, the season might not go for 12 months, but the coaching staff, they work 12 months. And what was Jason Riles going to pick up in the next 4 months that he hadn't already picked up in the 8 months previously? So, it's not like he's going to learn more stuff to take and use at a different side. He already would have picked up everything that he wanted to take from the Roosters and implement and put into his own style anyway. So, I don't know. I don't get it. Unless, of course, there was a blow-up, something's happened, which obviously, we're not there, so we don't know.
No. We'll finish off today by just discussing the last little bit of Origin that we'll discuss for a while. You and I have had a debate about who should have been the player of the series. So Ruben Cotter got it. Do you agree that Ruben Cotter should have got it, first of all?
No.
Okay, so we're both in agreement there. Now, Cotter had a good series. There's no doubt about it. He was really solid for Queensland. But I am in the camp that he should not have got it. I can pick three players who I would have had ahead of Cotter, at least three, I should say, who should have been ahead of Cotter. How many do you have ahead of Cotter?
Well, I have him in my top three. So Cotter, Cherry Evans, and Munster are my top three for the players of the series, and I get Cotter getting it because Munster and Cherry Evans weren't great in Game 3, and Cotter was still Cotter and got through his 48 tackles and 17 hit-ups or whatever it was. So I do get that. But, to answer your question, I have Munster and Cherry Evans as one of those two would have been my player of the series.
Okay, so I'm in agreement there. So Munster and Cherry Evans, to me, should have been... Well, I would have been happy with one of those to be man of the series. I thought Game 2, Cherry Evans, Game 1, Munster, particularly were very, very good. I would have had Lindsay Collins as man of the series, though, and I'll tell you why. So, Game 1, he was obviously really solid all three games, right? His stats are not mind blowing. I totally get that. He's not Ruben Cotter with the 48 tackles and the 17 hit-ups. I totally understand that. But his effort areas, I would argue, were the best of any player in the whole series. His effort to be there for that game-sealing try in Game 1 when he got there against James Tedesco. His efforts in Game 2 when he actually did get man of the match, which is funnily enough, because I thought that arguably his best games were Game 1 and 3, which is quite funny. But in Game 3, I would say he was Queensland's best player again. His effort areas were phenomenal. Every run that Queensland had, every half break, he was there in support. And I know that these are not, mind-blowing things. Well, actually, I would say they are mind-boggling things for a front rower. To be there every single time, he batted 2 balls dead for that would have been tries if he didn't. So his effort areas to me were supreme, and it's quite remarkable that he plays for the Roosters, who are so awful in these areas at the moment. But I would have had him as my player of the series, but I would have lived absolutely with Munster or DCE as 1 or 2.
Yeah, mate, and I understand exactly what you're saying. And I'm not saying that Lindsay Collins wasn't excellent, because of course he was excellent. He was great. But for mine, and I know we've had a chat about this, I just wouldn't have him in my top 5 or 6 players in the series. He had big moments. His effort areas were great. Were his effort areas great? Were they any better than anyone else's? Was it because we just don't expect Lindsay Collins to come up with those plays? These are all the things that come to mind for me. He did the things that, Pat Carrigan does those things every game. He did those things every game. Yeah, he didn't have the big moment where he plucked a bomb out of the air and, obviously exposed Teddy in that game. But someone like a Carrigan, and I don't even have Carrigan in my top 3 or 4, but I'm using him as an example. He pushed up in support every time someone was, in space. He chased his ass off every time someone made a break. He was always there. So is it because we don't always see those things from Lindsay Collins that we're probably inflating the performance a little bit? Or is it, he was great and maybe I've just got to sit back and not overanalyze it, because for mine, I just don't think he was in the best 5 or 6 players in the series.
I spoke to Hannay briefly after Game 3. I felt sorry for Josh. He had to get on a plane the very next morning to go to New Zealand because they got pumped, and then they got pumped over there. So it wasn't a great week for Josh. But coach's nightmare of a game for Queensland. They were just 1 or 2% off in literally every area.
Yeah, you could tell. I mean, I think in the first couple of sets they looked like they might have been up and about for it, but after that it was, like you said, those couple of percent, everyone was just off. I thought Valentine Holmes was really bad, to be honest.
Yeah,
it was the worst game of footy I've seen him play, and all it takes is being a couple of percent off, someone to have an off game, and New South Wales, they never look like losing that game.
the sense of urgency felt like it wasn't there by Queensland. You know, in game 1 and 2, there was a real sense of urgency because they won game 1, and there was a real focus on winning game 2, and the scoreline showed that they blew them out of the water. But and it and I understand why it is, but it must be hard to get up emotionally as much for a game 3 that you've already won than it is a game 1 or 2.
Oh, for sure, man. That's why I was so adamant in our last podcast before it that I just couldn't see New South Wales not winning. Like, all those things, there's a reason it happens once in a blue moon, and we spoke about Queensland having the best footy side, let alone best origin side that has potentially ever played, and even they could only do it once. So, you know, it's tough, and I can't remember who. I think it was Billy Moore actually brought it up during the week and spoke about, I think game 2 disguises a few things because, you know, New South Wales were not that far away game 1. They made a clear error in game 2 by playing Cook out in the centres and he got exposed. So they probably weren't quite as far away as what we thought originally. And again, it wasn't a surprise that they found a way to win that third game.
Who was your biggest winner of the Origin series as far as, like, who do you think had the most surprising series from a Queensland perspective going forward?
Well, I think we know that Walsh is a great footy player and he's got that X factor, and so I don't think that, even though he was so good, I don't think that shocked us as much as what, you know, we might have thought if it was this time last year. I think someone like a Cotter. I think for me, he went from, of course, he was excellent last year. We know he played, he played that game for Queensland before he got injured, and he was good for the Cowboys all year, and we knew there was something there. But for him to not be playing great, the Cowboys to not be going great, to all of a sudden do what he did, you know, it really sets him up to have a good 7 or 8 year Origin career now. So someone like him, I think, is great. Going back as well, you look at, you know, we know that Harry Grant's going to be there. Muntz has got another few years. Jerry Evans probably doesn't have much longer at that stage left in him. You know, your Carrigans and Fafitas, guys like that, they've got a lot of good footy ahead of them. You know, Valentine Holmes is nowhere near as old as what you think. The Hammer was excellent, and he's someone that it wouldn't have shocked me, you know, put him into the discussion around player of the series as well. So there's all of those things to think about. But look, the resilience that they showed was just excellent. But the point I was going to make before was, with that game 3, we did some really strange things. We really did. You know, apart from the boys had probably had a bit of fun, they deserved to have fun, let the hair down, had a few beers in camp. Why on earth did we swap Harry Grant and Ben Hunt? That's A.
It's a strange one.
Why on earth did we use our 7th sub with 18 minutes to go?
Yep.
You know, just a couple of things that were strange, and I've hardly heard anyone question it.
Yeah, and if that had lost on the series, I think we would have seen a lot more questioning about it. I just want to highlight 2 players that I thought were tremendous, and I'm really excited for them going forward. The first one you mentioned is the Hammer. Defensively, he was outstanding, and that was a big concern, obviously, going into it. But his speed, it honestly looks like he walks past them. Seriously, like he is just so on another level when it comes to his acceleration, and he's really exciting for Queensland going forward, particularly because we've got barely any centres. So for him to bed down that spot with Val, who I know had a shocker, but he's the Australian centre. I know that he had that bad game, but to bed those 2 positions down, I think is really important for Queensland going forward. And I just want to mention one other player who only played 1 game, or half of 1 game anyway. But I just think he's going to be so crucial to Queensland going forward. And he was what Queensland were missing in Game 3 as far as getting under the skin of Cody Walker, because I've got no doubt he would have. And that's Tom Gilbert. I think he is in pen going forward for Queensland.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's good, Gilbert, and you know, the Dolphins certainly miss him. Yeah, so you're right. He would have made a difference. I don't know if it would have changed the result too much, but he certainly he's got that bit of aggression, and he plays on that line, doesn't he? Between losing his head doing something silly and just purely ripping in and making life tough for everyone.
And sorry, I did miss one player, but he could have got man of the series actually, purely off of his defensive work, and it's rare that you say that about a winger, and that's Murray Taulagi. Some of the tries that he stopped were freakish. Yeah,
he was good. Wasn't electric in attack and didn't get a great amount of opportunities with the ball or to score tries, which is what you think of with a winger. But saving them is as important. And look, I reckon I wouldn't be exaggerating if I said he saved 4 tries over the first 2 games.
4 certain tries too.
Definitely.
Not 50-50s, 4 certain tries. Hey, Steve, good to talk to you, mate.
Thanks, mate.
This has been the 60 Go podcast.